Solving quadratic equations now. Remember, quadratic is anything that has an x squared in it. Now, if it's a simple equation, which means it just has an x squared and not a plain old x in it, like 2x squared plus 98 equals 0. Okay? If there is just an x squared, these are easy to solve just by solving the equation. You got to get the x by itself, so you subtract 98. Oops, this is supposed to be, well, let's just finish this one. And then you'd get 2x squared equals negative 98, then divide by 2, x squared equals negative 49. Square root it? 7, but actually it's, this one is a no solution. You can't have a negative in there. Now what that means is, if it's possible you get a no solution, you get an error on your calculator. What that means is if you were to graph it, it would just either be, it wouldn't intersect. It would either go up like that or down like that. So anytime you get an error on a calculator, it can still graph it. It'll just look like that. Now, I should have started off like this with a minus 98. That way that would have been plus. So then it would be 7. Okay? But now what you got to remember on these quadratics is the parabola is going to touch in 2 spots. So it's not just 7, it's plus or minus 7. Okay? Now, like what we did yesterday, you can solve quadratics by putting them in the graphing calculator, right? And then you can use the 0 function to figure out what that point is and that point is, and that gives you the answers. But you don't always have a graphing calculator, and it takes a little bit of time. It's not terrible, but so there is a formula that you can use to find the 2 answers. This formula, the solution for x is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac. Anyone recognize this? Mm-hmm. The very first section, they had you solve a bunch of problems like this. They told you what a, b, and c were. They were just getting you used to doing that. Divided by 2 times a. So, like this last problem that I did, the easy one to solve, x squared minus 98, 2x squared equals 0. You could use the quadratic formula to solve this, because a is 2, b is zero. There is no b, because remember it's ax squared plus bx plus c. And c is negative 98. Now, using this on this type of equation is just way longer than what you'd want to do, but I'll just show you what happens. So you plug these in. It'd be negative 0 plus or minus 0 minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a is 4. So remember, 0, you wouldn't put the negative because 0 is both positive and negative. If you figured out this part, you get 784. So, this is how you get your 2 answers. You first take 0 plus this divided by 4, and then 0 minus that divided by 4. Square root of 784 is 28. So 0 plus 28 is 28, divided by 4 is 7. 0 minus 28 is negative 28, divided by 4 is negative 7. Which remember we got by just solving it quickly. Add 98. divide by 2, and then square root it. The only thing is sometimes here, when you solve it this way, you forget to put the plus or minus. That's what's nice about the quadratic, you'll always get those two. Okay? So, if you wouldn't want to use the quadratic for an easy equation like this, although you could. So if we had one that we would want to, right here, A is 1. A is the term in front of the x squared. B is 2. C is negative 3. So we put these in here. Negative b plus or minus b squared. Now, I'm going to point this out now. We've kind of talked about this many times, like on the distance formula. This number is always going to be positive, right? So if b ever does turn out to be negative, remember the big calculators, if you put in like negative 6 squared, it's going to give you negative 36. The little calculators will give you positive 36. So if this ever a negative, when you square it, make sure it turns out to be positive. If it doesn't, you'll get an error or a wrong answer. So it would be b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. So you can figure out what that is. 4 take away 4 times 1 times negative 3 is 16, which is 4. So the two answers are negative 2 plus 4, which is 2, divided by 2 is 1. Negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6, divided by 2 is negative 3. Okay? So the quadratic formula helps you solve quadratic equations. Now the only two ways to solve, well, pretty much, is like I said, you can either use the graphing calculator to graph it and then find the zeros like we did yesterday, or use the quadratic formula. There is some shortcuts for doing easy ones like this, but we don't really learn those till Algebra 2. So I got